Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Cassie Viella. I am a realtor, a real estate investor, property manager here in San Antonio, Texas. And this channel is where we talk about all things real estate, home maintenance, design, a little bit of everything. So if that's your cup of tea, then make sure you hit the like button and subscribe. And today we're going to be talking about HOAs. So I was trying to come up with a topic for my meetup, and I asked my friend what I should talk about. And she said, you need to talk about HOAs because they're the worst and I hate them. And so I think that a lot of people share that sentiment, but I wanted to talk a little bit, if you're a new homeowner or, even a new investor, it may be the first time you're dealing with an HOA. So I thought it would be helpful to go over that. People tend to have very strong opinions about HOAs, either good or bad. So some people really like them because, generally an HOA is going to provide some amenities, some like a playground or a park or a pool or gated entrance, something like that. So that appeals to some people, especially the pool here in San Antonio where it's so hot. And then, some people like that there are some rules that your neighbor can't, like park an RV maybe next to you or, have cows, I don't know, different rules that some crazy things your neighbors might do. So some people really like that. And then other people really hate them because, those rules can get tedious. It's kind of like, well, this is my property. How can you tell me what color to paint my door? That kind of thing. So whichever side of that spectrum you're on, you need to know how to deal with HOAs, because if you're an investor and you're investing in San Antonio, chances are you're going to end up with at least one property that's in an HOA. So I'm going to talk about things that you need to do during your due diligence period. So while you're checking out, just like you're going to have the home inspected, you're going to have contractors out to look at repairs and things, and you're going to get the survey. You need to check into the HOA as well. So the first thing you need to do is read the CCRs. So that stands for Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. And so this is a public record. This is what the developer puts in place to basically protect their investment. So the developer is splitting up the subdivision. They want to be able to sell those homes for top dollar. And in order to do that, they need to make sure that the neighborhood stays as nice as possible during the entire construction, which can sometimes be several years, up to a decade or more. So they want to make sure that people follow the rules, people keep their homes nice so that they can make money. So that's really where it comes from. And so they create this document. It has rules. It's going to be very different from property to property. It just kind of depends on the surroundings and the different issues. But you need to look through those because they can have some really strange rules. I had a client that read through theirs, and it said that they couldn't let anybody live with them that wasn't a blood relative. And so that was a little bit weird. Like you can't have a roommate in this neighborhood. It seemed a little bit classist. So they decided not to go forward with that particular home. You can find these online a lot. A lot of HOAs have a website, and hopefully they'll post the CCRs or the rules at least on their website. You can also look for it in the deed records on the county public records site. It's a little bit harder to find there though. You want to find out what the dues are of the HOA, because the listing on the MLS could be wrong. So, when I'm listing a property, I usually ask the owners, okay, how much are your dues? Well, dues go up each year a lot of the time. So maybe they're thinking of the dues from last year, and then the new dues are going to go up, or maybe they don't know and they just kind of guess. Maybe they say what it was when they moved in, which was very different from now. So I've seen in the same neighborhood, multiple houses have different dues amounts on the MLS. So you want to make sure you know what the dues are, especially if you're an investor and you're using that in your cash flow numbers. You want to find out if the current seller has any unpaid fines or unpaid dues. The title company is usually going to take care of this. They're going to make sure that those are paid before you buy the home. But you do just kind of want to be aware of that and make sure that's happening. one strategy I like to do is talk to the neighbors. I mean, this is just a good strategy in general when you're buying a home, because usually if you kind of walk around the neighborhood, you find somebody who's out and about, they'll give you the tea on the whole neighborhood. You know, you can find out everything. You can find out everything about the house. Usually they'll have all of it. So you want to ask them if it's, you know, if there's something that's a big deal to you. You want to kind of check with them and say like, hey, does this HOA, you know, care about this thing? Like if you're a gardener, you know, is the HOA going to be mad if I put in a vegetable garden? And, you know, find out from them. They're going to know. They live there. They're going to tell you the most accurate answer usually. And then if the HOA has either a pool or a gated entrance, then just know that those are things that cost a lot more money to maintain over time. And so your dues are likely to go up, especially a gated entrance is something that it's one of those things that doesn't seem very expensive, but it really, really is. They break, they have to do road maintenance. It gets really pricey. And I've had friends that move into a neighborhood with a gated community and then regret it because every year the HOA dues are going up so substantially to fix the gate. So just know if you want that and you're willing to pay for that, that's fine. But just realize that's going to cost you more money. One other thing to do before you buy is to look into the financials of the HOA. This is not as big of a deal if you are buying a single family home, because they're usually not going to come at you with a huge bill to replace something, because your home is like its own standalone building. But if you're in a condo, you can move in and then the next month they realize they have to replace the roof and the condo board hasn't done a good job of setting aside reserves, and they can go back to the homeowners and ask for pretty substantial amounts of money to get those things done. So if you're buying a condo or a townhome, anything like that, you want to take a look and make sure that the HOA is being run well and that it has reserves. So if you're going to live in a home that's in an HOA, you know, the main thing is pretty obvious things like pay your dues on time. I set a calendar alarm. They're usually due in January. So I have a calendar alarm in the first week of January to remind me to pay the dues. You should note that HOA dues are not part of your mortgage payment. So a lot of people escrow in their taxes and property insurance into their mortgage payments. The HOA dues are going to be separate than that. So you need to budget for that, put a little bit aside every month, or do whatever you have to do, but you have to pay those on top of your mortgage payment. Keep an eye on your mail because most HOAs communicate through the mail. So they'll send you little love letters when your grass gets too high, from experience. So, you know, if you take care of things when they send the initial warning, then you can usually stay out of trouble. Communication is really key. If it's a big company, a lot of the HOAs in San Antonio are now managed by these larger companies that they're like a big overarching company that manages a lot of different HOAs. So it can be kind of confusing, like who am I supposed to talk to about my HOA? Find a point of contact that you can email and form a relationship with, just so that you can get things done there. You know, participate. I think that one of the things, I have a friend who's the secretary of his HOA, and he gets so frustrated because they can't do anything at meetings because not enough people show up to have quorum. So even if you just participate at a basic level of going to the meetings or even sending a proxy form in, then your neighbors are going to appreciate that. The HOA is going to appreciate that. And if there's a problem, you're going to have an easier time getting through it than somebody who doesn't participate. So kind of basic, be a good neighbor, follow the rules, participate, check on the rules before you do anything. So, you know, you might think like, this is my property. I can do what I want, right? I can build a deck, whatever. Well, you might not be able to, because part of buying that home is agreeing to the rules of the HOA. And so the HOA might have rules about how big the deck can be, or porches you can add on, or paint colors, carports, all kinds of things. Some of them get really nitpicky. They Like if you do any landscaping, you have to ask permission. So, just make sure you know what the rules are. Certain pets and animals are against the rules. So, like in San Antonio, it is legal to have chickens. You can have 8 chickens right now. But a lot of HOAs have made it against the rules to have chickens. So, if you want to have chickens, you've got to make sure that you're not going into an HOA situation. Like I have chickens, and I am specifically in a home that doesn't have an HOA for that reason. So animals are a thing to look into. Another big one is basketball goals. For some reason, a lot of HOAs don't want you to have a basketball goal in the front driveway. So if that's a big deal, or before you put one up, make sure you check on that rule. Another thing to really check on if you live in an HOA is and this was brought up at my investor meeting that I just got done with. If you transfer the property from your personal name into a company, like let's say you form an LLC and transfer it into the LLC, there may be not fines, but fees associated with that. And if you don't pay them at the time, then when you go to sell, they might add on fines because you should have done that then. So this is where a lot of people dislike HOAs, because there can be some rules that are kind of silly that you maybe don't know about, and then you break them, and then you have this expensive fine. So, pay attention. If you're going to do something like that, make sure you look into the transfer fee. If you are a landlord and you have a property that is in an HOA, the main thing you have to be concerned about is communication. So first of all, you need to communicate with the HOA. Make sure that they are mailing any of those notices, any warnings. They're mailing them to you, or sometimes they'll email you. Make sure that they're sending you the bill each year. Just make sure that they have your actual mailing address, because otherwise they're going to mail it to the house, and your tenant is not going to give you that. Again, communicate the rules to the tenant. So if they don't allow basketball goals, then you need to let your tenant know when they move in, by the way, you can't have a basketball goal. It's against the HOA rules. So if there's some rules like that, communicate that. Find out how they can get keys to the amenities. I know in the one that I have in an HOA, all I have to do is I have to email the lease to the person, and then they can go by the office and pick up the keys. My best tip, like on a lot of things here, is when you are moving a new tenant into a property, go around to the surrounding houses and give your card to them and say, hey, if there's any problems, let me know. You could text me at this number. They're going to tell you before the HOA does. Like the neighbors are going to tell you if there's a problem before the HOA does. And so that can avoid a hassle in the first place. And then they're also going to tell you, if the tenant's doing something they're not supposed to be doing or something destructive. And then it gets your name out there so you can acquire more properties, because then you can also say, like, by the way, if you know anybody trying to sell, I can buy for cash or whatever, And yeah, I already mentioned setting a calendar reminder each year. So if you, after listening to this, if you're like, okay, I don't even want to deal with HOAs, it sounds like a lot. Then you can limit your MLS search. You can, I can easily put a thing to avoid HOAs. And then you want to usually look at older neighborhoods, because like I said, the reason for the CCRs is because the developers are trying to sell the land. So if you're looking at, like, my home was built in 1969, that's why there's no HOA. So, of course, then you have the older home issues. So it's always kind of like, which problem are you willing to put up with? For me, I hate HOAs so much that I'm willing to put up with cast iron plumbing to avoid them. But if you don't have chickens, then you probably aren't going to have an issue with HOA. That's all I have. Just, be a good neighbor, be a good landlord, communicate, stay on top of things. Just do your best and over communicate if anything, and then usually most problems will be solved. If you like this video, then please remember to like and subscribe. If you think I missed something, if there's anything that you think is important about HOAs, you can leave it in the comments. If you have an HOA horror story, then let's hear it. Tell us all about it. Love to share some of those. Yeah, if you have any other ideas for content, then definitely leave a comment. You can follow me on Instagram at Cassie Viella, and you can message me there as well. So have a good day.